When we ask what the government knows about UFOs, one of the central beliefs in all of this is that there is a vast and nebulous conspiracy to cover up some terrible, profound, sinister truth about UFOs and to keep it from the media and from the public. And I know a lot of people in this room probably believe that. And in a sense, I like to say that there is a cover-up of sorts about UFOs, but it's what I call a soft cover-up, not a hard cover-up. I can only obviously speak really about the position in the United Kingdom in terms of what I've had direct responsibility for. And as I mentioned, I worked for the British government for 21 years at the Ministry of Defence as a civilian employee. 3 years of that 21-year career were spent on the Ministry of Defence's UFO project. We did not, hand on heart, have a crashed spaceship hidden away in an Air Force hangar anywhere. Or if we did, they didn't tell me. But that is a quote from a now declassified British government document where it basically says, yes, our policy is to downplay our involvement with this. And I want to give you some tangible examples of this as the presentation goes on and as we get into some cases. But this is basically the Ministry of Defense saying, yeah, we're not going to tell the public everything about this. So that's why I call it a kind of soft cover-up, not hard cover-up. That, in a single soundbite, is the Ministry of Defence's public position on UFOs, pushed aggressively over many, many years with the British Parliament, the media, and the public. It's this glib soundbite that UFOs are of no defense significance and only of very little defense interest. And it has been trotted out for decades. And I'm sorry to have to confess, but of course when I was doing that job, I probably wrote hundreds and hundreds of letters to people where I trotted out that phrase myself. The reality is actually a little bit different. The work that I did is broadly comparable to the work done by the now defunct USAF program, Project Blue Book. But unlike the American program, ours ran for 56 years. It generated around 60,000 documents, and some of them fairly highly classified. So, you know, think back to that no defense significance soundbite that we routinely trotted out, and then we dismissed the whole phenomenon really in 3 words. And yet, behind the scenes, this was the reality of the situation. So I guess it's a cover-up of sorts. That's just to show you the headquarters building, Ministry of Defence main building on Whitehall in London, where I spent most of my 21-year career. And appropriately enough, when I was on the UFO project, I was on the 8th floor, which is about as high as it gets. Maybe they figured I needed to be high up. But our job on the UFO project was to research and investigate the phenomenon, to see whether any of the sightings reported posed any threat to the defense of the United Kingdom, or might be useful to the Ministry of Defense in any other way, in terms of, for example, general scientific knowledge. And again, I'm going to get onto some specifics of what governments are really interested in when it comes to UFOs a little later on, when I get to talk about a declassified intelligence study, which is possibly the most significant document when it comes to explaining what governments do in relation to this topic and why. We investigated around 200 to 300 sightings each year, and we had a number of different ways that we would actually do our investigations. Firstly, obviously, we would interview witnesses, get the story, and then we would basically run a whole series of checks, and we would see if we could correlate the sighting reports that we had received with anything that we knew about already or could find out about. And part of that, a big part of that, obviously, was looking at military radar data to see whether visual sightings could be corroborated by anything that we tracked. But we had a number of other things that we could do. We liaised with the astronomical community, specifically at the Royal Observatory Greenwich, to see whether astronomical explanations would explain any sightings. We liaised with the meteorological office, again, to see whether any weather phenomena might have had a bearing on this. We knew every single flight path, civilian flight paths, military flying exercises, low-flying training. We knew where all the weather balloon launch sites were. We knew where, if there was anything flying, we either knew about it or could find out about it. And one part of that was actually the Ballistic Missile Early Warning Center at an Air Force base called Fylingdales. And I just put that up to show you the radomes in the background, but I also put it up because it's just a wonderful shot of two Vulcan bombers, a truly iconic British warplane that has, I suspect, on occasion been mistaken for a UFO itself. Marvelous aircraft. But the point again there is to say that when we were investigating UFOs, as we were doing this from within government, we clearly had access to resources that were not available to civilian UFO research groups. The military radar and Fylingdales, the Ballistic Missile Early Warning Center, of course, had space tracking radar. And all this could be brought to bear on our investigations. And we amassed, as you saw in one of the previous slides, tens of thousands of documents about this, some at fairly highly classified level. And our conclusions were that around 80% of UFO sightings could be explained with high degree of confidence as misidentifications of known objects and phenomena, or as hoaxes, or in a small number of cases, some sort of psychological delusions. In around 15% of cases, there was insufficient data to make any meaningful assessment, and in around 5% of cases, we didn't know, unexplained. Now, it's important to stress, unexplained does not equal extraterrestrial spacecraft. That does not mean we thought that 5% of UFO sightings were extraterrestrial, nor does it mean we necessarily thought one case was extraterrestrial. Unknown means unknown, nothing more, nothing less. Flipping it the other way, what that did mean is that we could not entirely rule out the possibility that some UFOs were extraterrestrial, or indeed attributable to some other exotic, unknown phenomena. And I use phenomena because, echoing something Nick said, just at the concluding of his presentation, there is not necessarily going to be one single neat mystery, answer to the UFO mystery. Chances are a number of different things are going on. And if there is an anomalous explanation, there's not necessarily going to be a single anomalous explanation. There may be multiple phenomena at work, all unknown. And we had some pretty good cases. We had plenty of sightings from police officers, pilots, military personnel, plenty of sightings where visual reports were corroborated by radar evidence, and where the combination of, say, pilot and radar told us that, yes, something was performing speeds and maneuvers that we couldn't match. And certainly in the UK, and I know elsewhere, there were several cases over the years where military jets were scrambled as a result of uncorrelated targets tracked on radar, when the pilots then acquired the object or phenomena on its airborne radar, and then the pilots sometimes got a visual as well. And sometimes, you know, veritable games of cat and mouse would play themselves out in the skies over the UK. And of course, we were well aware that it had gone on in other countries too.